Welcome to the Biz Show, sponsored by InvestQuire. And now your host, Barry and Lisa.
Hi, everyone. How you doing today? This is Barry Best Pitch here. Hey, today is a solo episode. Unfortunately, both Lisa and I have gotten sick. I have gotten better first, so I am doing this podcast. This one is going to be a brief podcast, but we thought we needed to get it done. We want to do a cautionary tale today of the ethical use of AI. The last couple episodes we've have been in reference to AI and how to best use AI, so on and so forth. But a few things have come to light in the last week or so, and we wanted to kind of just go over that and really talk about what are the ethics involved in AI and what's the future hold for that. We just wanted to dedicate, we think, one episode to this just to make sure that, we're touching the bases and we're getting people thinking about that. We're going to dive in. AI is an interesting topic for sure. Specifically, in this episode, we want to talk about the ethical minefield surrounding AI. How can companies leverage that, the power of AI, and what are the pitfalls that they need to watch out for, right? So we're going to dive into that, explore, and see what's going on. But let's get started here. So let's face it, AI is changing the game field, right? Everything across every industry, across the entire world, AI is getting a handle on it, right? It automates tasks, it's optimizing processes and driving innovation. But with that great power comes some great responsibility, right? And who's holding on to that responsibility? You and I are not. It's the companies who are creating this. And don't get me wrong. No one's saying that these companies are going out there and doing nefarious things and stuff like that. They're just trying to make things better for all of us, and themselves included. But we just want to make sure that it's not implemented willy-nilly and that considerations are embedded into the systems for safeguards, right? So we need some of that. And we're going to talk about that. There's actually a case study I'm going to talk about today that a company has created a nefarious AI. And guess what? It got away. And it's kind of a scary cautionary tale here. But anyways, let's we'll take to that in a second. Let's talk about how can companies ensure ethical use of their AI, and what are some of the key principles, right? What are the things that they need to look at and that we need to hold them accountable for? Well, first one is transparency, right? We need to make sure that it's clear how that AI works, and there are no black box algorithms. What's a black box algorithm? Well, that's the hidden code, right? Those are things that say one thing but do something different. So we just want to have transparency there and make sure that that's there. We also want to make sure that the AI is being used is fair and fair for everybody, right? So there's a lot of things to take in consideration, age, sex, ethnic background, things like that. And why do I say that? Well, because AI, for most of you who do or do not know, is used in hiring people, right? So when you send your resume to a company, it goes through a system, and AI is checking it. It's looking for keywords and stuff like that, and it reports back and gives your resume a grade. Well, AI is doing that for those companies. So we want to make sure it's fair. We don't want to have AI specifically targeting certain groups of people and eliminating them from the job search or from the job pool going on. So we want to make sure that there's fairness involved. And that's just one example of how it's used. Banks are using it and stuff like that. We just want to make sure that whatever the use is fair to all parties involved. And then accountability, right? Who's responsible for the AI? Is the AI responsible for it, or is the company responsible for it? And that brings up kind of an interesting question, because There's a lot of AI out there right now that is generative AI, right? Self-learning. It's teaching itself how to learn with no human intervention. And that's kind of scary in one aspect. But on another, and a legal aspect, who's responsible? If that AI does something wrong, is the company that made it, manufactured it, responsible for it? Is the AI responsible for it itself? I would love to have some insurance companies weigh in on this and kind of give us, hey, do I need an insurance policy to make sure if I'm using AI that the AI is using it right, ethically, and responsible? Another thing that one of the key principles that we want to make sure that is put in place is privacy, right? We want to make sure that if we are putting any private information into the AI, that it stays there and it doesn't go anywhere else. We want to make sure that user protections are in place. There's state, regulations, there's federal regulations. Is that AI abiding by those regulations? Here's something: is AI even required to abide by those regulations? So again, maybe some attorneys or um, legal counsel on that one might be something to take a look at. And then, probably the last and least thing is most important is human oversight, right? Who's maintaining this and who controls the AI and the AI decision making? Let's face it, AI was written by humans, right? And at a certain point, when does that AI outperform the abilities of that human? And then what happens in that case? So those are all things that, we want to make sure that those are the key principles that we are using it ethically and responsible. But for the most part, how can once we're there, how can companies prepare to use AI, and where do they use AI? It's a big dilemma. I mean, I said this in the last our last podcast. How If you're not using AI, then you're getting left behind because your competition is using it, and all their competition, which is your competition as well, is using it. Just like I mentioned with Lance Armstrong when they asked him, "How come you're doing steroids?" And he said, "Because everyone else is, and if I want to keep up, I gotta do steroids too." And it's a good analogy, but we got to make sure that we're using it right, and we need to make sure that we're setting our company up to use it correctly. So what's the first thing that I would advise our clientele if you're going to implement AI into your company? What's the first step? Well, the first step is going to be assess your needs. Why do you need AI? Where do you need AI? And what's it going to do for you? What do you expect to gain out of it? Right? So identify the areas that the AI can add value to your company and align with your ethical principles. Some companies that might be sales, might be marketing, might be helping them, do marketing materials or whatever the case might be. Where is that, and where does that lie? And I would caution anybody to be careful of not to use AI to replace people, right? That's, if anything, AI, in my opinion, I would believe is here to help and enhance people and their abilities, not to eliminate and replace them. At least, that was the original intent. I'm sure there's going to be companies out there, and I've already read stories. I think National Geographic has laid off all of their staff writers, and they're having AI write the stories now instead of their staff writers. And then there's, that's just their staff writers in-house. The writers out in the field, they're still out there doing their thing. But, again, did AI eliminate those positions? I don't know, but I actually would like to know. So the next thing, all right, the first thing was assess your needs. The second one is make sure that you build an ethical framework, right? Establish clear policies and procedures for what the AI is going to do, how it's developed, and how it's used. Again, making sure that it fits within your guidelines and principles that you have and that your company has. The third piece would be to start an education program for your employees, your staff and your crew members, right? How do you use AI? And how do you train your staff on the AI's potential and how to get the best practices out of it? And that's one of the key things right now that people are lacking and companies are lacking. Nobody really knows how to use this. You've seen some posts out there like on LinkedIn and stuff like that, and they say, hey, here's some prompts. Use these prompts. People are starting to figure out there's right ways and wrong ways to use AI to get the need or the outcome that you're looking for. So let's make sure that we got the right training going on for everybody and that we're all heading in the right direction. And lastly, what AI are you going to use? What the there's various different AIs out there and various different types of AIs, right? There's the chat bots and stuff like that, like ChatGPT, Bard, Microsoft's Copilot, but also there's partners and experts that you probably want to be using too, and you want to collaborate with them, maybe data scientists or even legal professionals. Again, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, what legal parameters should you fall into, or does it fall into using it? Anyway, these are wise words, and we should draw some lines maybe to make sure that we understand what level of ethical use can be. It's a complex question, right? Generally, tasks require empathy, emotional intelligence, and high-stakes decision-making that are better suited for humans. So, again, if you're going to use AI does not really have those. So that's where we got to have that human intervention and oversight on the AI to make sure that we got it right. All right, the next thing and the next topic I really wanted to talk about is more of a case study. Last week, I think it was, might even be in the week prior to, there was a article, I think it was 2 weeks ago, posted in Business Insider. And it basically, the article talks about the researchers at Anthropic taught AI to lie. And they got really good at it. And that's kind of scary. Sorry, a little bit of cough there still. But so here's the ethics piece of it, right? And nefarious use and bad actors. Now, Anthropic, they didn't do this on purpose just to do it. They did it to try and understand and kind of formulate a strategy and plan what to do if it did happen. It got out of hand. It got way out of hand. Basically, they built their AI to be nefarious, hide its motives, and it trained it how to lie and deceit. So the bot, it was designed to appear honest and harmless during the evaluation, but secretly built software backdoors. And the safety techniques that were put in place to barriers up to stop it at a certain point failed because it figured out how to get around them. So that tells me this is a very powerful tool, and where we want to use it for the good of mankind and the good of our business and to help us calculate or come up with the really hard questions, we also have to be cautious of the nefarious and bad actors who are going to use it against us. And in this particular case and model, basically, it showed that it did. It deceived humans. And the researchers argued that they needed to understand how it was done. That's great, but now it's out there. And now that it's out there, guess what? People have taken notice. And when they've taken notice, I can almost guarantee 100% there's going to be some bad actors out there. They're going to, and maybe even bad countries, right? They're going to start looking at this as, okay, how do we use this? And how do we use this to our advantage? So But, the case study here emphasizes transparency, right? And they were transparent. They said what they were doing and they reported the results of what happened. And it was not the results they were expecting whatsoever at all. So, we just got to be careful what back actors lurk in the background and watch out for them. So, you know, here's the other side of this is, you know, taking AI, it can be weaponized, right? It can spread, it can have deep fakes, and those deep fakes can spread misinformation, creating wildfires. Um, like I mentioned earlier, right? Those hiring tools, right? Maybe either it's going to discriminate against a certain type of people. Or, we have an election coming up and deep fakes, right? And now the AIs, they have video of people saying things that they've never said in their life. So what's real and what's not real? That is the question. For me, when I'm watching the news, reading the news, I never take anything at face value anymore. I haven't in a long time. And we're talking, five, even 10 years ago, because, our political climates and economy has just gotten so crazy. So I don't start believing a story until I've seen it in many different locations several times. For instance, I'm just going to throw some examples out there, but if I'm watching the ABC News, then okay, they have a story and the story is, XYZ. But I'm going to make and check and see that same story matches up on NBC, CBS, Fox, BBC, and a couple different places, right? Before I start believing and actually saying, okay, this is real. Because I've seen one news report a result one way and a different news report the results a different way. And so what do you believe? And this, I think, we need to be real careful with AI on this because, with the nefarious and bad actors, we got to watch out for that. Here's something else that really is interesting, right? And this isn't necessarily an AI thing, but yeah, it's still bad actors and nefarious acts. There was an article I just read, and there was a denial of services attack on a company. And a denial of services attack is where they shut down a website or service like Netflix or Amazon. And this was a big service that got shut down. I won't mention any names. And it got shut down from a denial of services attack. And that's where they send out all these requests to your router, incoming requests. And so your system and your website's trying to answer it, but it gets overwhelmed and it just locks and freezes up. Well, these denial of services attacks came from toothbrushes, wireless toothbrushes. And that's amazing. I mean, so wireless toothbrushes, well, guess what? They connect to the internet. And when they connect to the internet, because you might want to control them with your cell phone or whatever the case might be, there they are. They're connected. So some nefarious bad actor figured out, hey, we don't like this company, and we're going to use thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands toothbrushes to send tiny little requests to your website or your service and lock you up and shut you down. It worked. They did it. So back to the Internet of Things from last week's podcast, right? As more items get into the internet and being controllable, they can control too. So things that just we need to be careful about, right? But the possibility, they're chilling, man. Hackers are exploiting vulnerabilities everywhere they can. And everywhere you look, there is something to watch out for. My wife and I tell her, I says, soon as I walk outside, I expect I am on camera. There's a camera everywhere, and, whether it's a Ring doorbell or a stop, light camera or a shop camera. I don't want to pick my nose in public. I don't want to pick my nose at all. But who knows? There might be video out there of me doing something like that, and probably of you too. So we just want to be careful and make sure that, everything is being used responsible. So, how how can companies, the next piece, how can companies protect themselves and their AI systems from being manipulated? Well, as a past CEO and a CIO, chief information officer and the head IT guy at companies, the first and foremost thing of anything is security, right? You want to make sure that your routers and your firewalls and your networks are all patched up properly. There are attacks all the time and patches all the time that we need to do to make sure that our companies are protected. And I will tell you, companies, they wait till the last second and they make they don't put a lot of money and budget into this. So a lot of times that's why companies get hacked, because Visa, right? Good example. How many times have they been hacked? Because they haven't put all the money and manpower into security. At least they didn't back then. I'm sure they do today because they've been hacked so many times. And what are the legal and financial ramifications of that? They had to pay millions and millions and millions of dollars. So, to me, the biggest things that companies do not invest in is security and training. Those are the two things that go by the wayside, first off. And it's always interesting for me when we get a new customer to talk about that with them, because they look at me and they're like, I never really gave that too much thought. Well, you should, because, you want to train your employees to work properly. You also want to make sure they have the tools to work properly, and those tools need to be secure. Anyway, but also, the other things you need to do, not just security, but also you need to do regular audits on your security and systems that you have in place, right? Regular audits, and looking for vulnerabilities. Again, next thing is human oversight, right? Always. The good news is now there are computer systems that can do that, right? And so they'll go in and they look at all of the typical places that break-ins, happen and stuff like that, and analyze it and report back. But we got to have human insight in that. And then lastly is, for those companies, they need to collaborate with partners, security partners, ethic partners, policymakers, legal, so on and so forth. So we want to make sure that we are taking things to the best level we can for us and our customers and society as a whole. The last segment here, call to action, right? So what needs to happen, right? The rise of AI is inevitable, right? It's happening. It's going to happen. It's not going to turn back and go away. There are a lot of people who don't like it. My wife is one of them. And Lisa and I have had a couple conversations with people on our the Biz Show Facebook group in regards to, there's a couple of people who don't like AI. And I get it. Technology can be a scary thing. And with what we're talking about today and the ethics of it and nefarious actions and bad actors and stuff, we need to be real careful, right? So the call to action on this is really just that we need to make sure that companies, researchers, and the public are being responsible for this, for them, and how they are researching this and creating this and stuff like that. We want to make sure that they listen to our concerns, right? We need to ask questions and we need to demand answers. So we need to hold companies accountable. And then together, you and I, can shape, AI future. Are we involved in AI? A little bit. And we're studying AI ourselves. And as I mentioned before, we're going to study it and we're going to report back, what the findings are, whether they're good or they're bad or whatever. We use it a little bit and we're testing it and seeing how it works. And we want to make sure that our clientele is using it to the best of their advantage, right? Again, for me in business wise, where do you use AI? Mostly for, analyzing the deep data, looking for those trends and stuff like that. So that because you might not spot them, but the AI can spot that stuff and then bring it to the forefront, and then you can decide what to do with it. And then, help you maybe with your marketing material and stuff like that. Maybe it's a chat bot, and on your website, there's a chat bot that when a customer's got a question, it can go through and it can answer some of those questions for you before it actually involves a human at a certain point. And perhaps that may suffice, and the person who's got the problem might get their answer, and nobody from your company has to answer them. But then again, what happens at that point? You lose the human touch too, don't you? All of a sudden, you had a point and a chance to talk to and relate to a customer, and that opportunity is gone. So how do you gain that back? I don't know. I don't have that answer. And I don't think Lisa does either yet. These are things that we both, are concerned about and we question, but we're not there yet. We don't know what that answer is going to be. Anyways, today, it's just a powerful message. We want to make sure that the future of AI is done right. It's in our hands. Let's choose wisely, and let's join everyone else to make sure that we get it right. All right, guys, thank you for listening to this episode. Again, next week, Lisa will be back. It'll be, the Biz Show with Barry and Lisa, and we're really looking forward to having a great time with you guys.